Hey, it's Shane. I'm an independent A&R and manager in the music industry. Over the past few years, I decided that I wanted to launch a podcast about the journeys of musical artists and other industry folks from a mental health perspective. Many of the inspiring, uplifting, and sometimes heartbreaking stories you hear about the music industry are true. Everyone in this industry has a story to tell. I hope through these vulnerable conversations that we're able to inspire creatives in music and also shift the music industry towards one that is more welcoming and encouraging to all. Welcome to intentcast. Atarah Valentine is a musical artist, mental health advocate, and manifestation coach who has done the work to go far beyond self-imposed limitations. Atarah releases music that asks the deeper questions, most notably with his first self-written, produced, and mixed single, Modern Love, which is out now. In this conversation, we talk about Atarah's own journey through the music industry and the ways we can move forward together towards making it a better place for new creative talents. This was a very deep and exciting conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. Hi, Atarah.
Hi.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat on my podcast, intentcast. We've already had a little catch up, so we're super stoked to have this conversation now. I wanted to just jump right into your new single, Modern Love, which is your first self-written, produced, and recorded single in quite some time, and you're releasing it.
Ever? Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't that crazy?
How does that feel?
It feels really amazing, actually, because, I have thousands of songs when I tell you, thousands, right? And something always happened where in the last moment, I think my self-esteem and my self-worth was so low throughout my career, which makes me feel things much more than most people are used to. So I have some very intimate songs, but every time I went to put them out, I was like, it's not good enough, or this isn't this, or I would find some kind of excuse to make myself feel bad and never share it. So when I released Hallelujah last year, that was to kind of break the seal, because it was a song I so much connected with emotionally. And I was going down this mental health rabbit hole in a major way. And I was like, I think I actually have a new perspective and way of presenting this that people haven't heard before that was so aligned with me. So I did that just to break the seal, thinking I would follow it up with an original song a month later. And then I just kind of went back down into this place and didn't, and spent a year writing some of the most vulnerable, probably the most vulnerable, raw, and intimate music I've ever written before. And Modern Love was part of that group of songs. And I just feel now why did I have such a block around releasing music? It's been so amazing, and I'm so excited to put more singles out,
Yeah, that's so exciting. What do you think got you over that finish line, this 1,001st or 1,025th time? I feel like there must have been a moment where you were thinking and those thoughts came flooding in again. But you pushed through them this time.
Yeah, there's actually a few things, and I can tell you exactly what they are because they had such a huge impact on my life. And that is, I discovered this woman, Lacey Phillips, who has this manifestation practice that's all based in neuroplasticity work. So you go through and you do all of your inner child work and shadow work around shame and things like that. And all of these feelings surfaced that I thought I dealt with because I was able to speak about my life in such an intellectual way that I thought because I wasn't crying, it meant that I dealt with it. But the fact is, I just removed the information from the emotion and stuffed the emotion, right? So that opened I mean, just the floodgates, right? I literally spent 6 months, a year and a half ago, just like crying on my floor as all of this stuff was coming up. So I did that. And then I found like lots of stuff around neuroplasticity, which is basically going in and reprogramming memories and ideas and thoughts that you believe to be true into something that's more supportive and giving yourself what you needed. Right. So, I was reading a lot about that, doing the work, meditation, all the things that I was always so resistant to. I finally just surrendered to and completely submerged myself in. So Modern Love happened. And the thing is, like, I believe that when you do unblock and you are open and you're sharing your energy, things just kind of come much more effortlessly. You don't have to have the struggle of like finding the perfect rhyme or the very like music school way of writing a song. Like, start with a catchy title and use, suggestive imagery that has like multiple meanings and like all of this like intellectual approach to creating music. Right. So I was just hiking and I literally in my head heard the words, modern love, put it in my phone. And then I was like walking again in my hike. And a few moments later, I literally picked up my phone and I was like, it's a matter of opinion. Da-da-da-da, looking for da-da-da-da-da, affection and others, whoa. And save that. And then the pre-chorus popped in my head and I came home and I sat at my piano and I wrote it in, I don't know, maybe like 10 minutes. And that's how, and that was just basically the process for this. And every other song I wrote for this EP, it was just like a big rush.
When did this little bridge come into place at the end about how everything isn't real? That seems really important, actually, as I think a concept that you're starting to kind of bring up when you're discussing deprogramming. Do you want to talk a little bit on that bridge and also how this piano song evolved into your own production?
For sure. And I love that you actually listened to it and know the lyrics. That makes me like literally fills me with so much joy.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm so grateful because like we live in such an ADD culture. And when you're sharing something that's so meaningful to you and you see like people are absorbing pieces of it, it's like you can't ask for anything more than that. Right. So, that song, I actually wrote the whole song on piano. And then I sat to do the production and I didn't want it to be a piano song. I wanted it to have like major peaks and valleys. So kind of once I write a song normally, I normally have a different process, but for this song, like they're all slightly different, but this was extremely different from the other ones. I wrote the whole thing on piano, finished the lyrics, and as I did that, I was hearing all the harmonies and stuff that's happening in the pre-chorus, like in my head, and I would like record the harmonies into my phone. Like it literally it was like raining down on me. It was really bizarre, actually, like, talking about it, because I feel like I almost can't take credit for it, Yeah. And so then I sat at my laptop and I knew I wanted the choruses to be really anthemic and big and make people feel like they were just like thrown into the air and anything's possible.
Yeah.
And especially because the verses are so personally intimate to how I was feeling, because, and this was pre-quarantine. That's what's so crazy with the song, is that I wrote it maybe 7 months ago.
Wow.
And I finished the production, I don't know, maybe like 5 months ago. And I got my master back right when quarantine started. So when I sat to do the production, I just thought like, okay, the verses are really heavy and there's a lot to absorb. There's a lot of words, right? So and the chorus is so open. So I was like, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to let the music push the emotion, the music, the drums, the intensity in the chorus. And I want like literally nothing in the verses. So the verses are the smallest amount of tracks I've probably ever used. Like there's a bass line, one pad, vocal, and like a kick and a snare. And the drum pattern's so open too. I just wanted everything to feel very intimate, like someone was in the room with me. Yeah, and then the bridge, the pre-chorus with the strings, like leads into the anthemic chorus. And yeah, it just like, it came very, very, very natural. And it just felt good as I was doing it.
Yeah.
And it was probably the easiest song I've ever produced. And then when I got to the bridge, I had a melody originally, and I was like, no, this has to be that one moment in the song. And I was like, I want to talk in the bridge. I want to take kind of the melody away completely and have it just be almost uncomfortably sparse.
Yeah.
And at first it was just piano and like spoken word basically. But then I took one of the strings and reversed them and pitched it up 2 octaves. So it's this weird like ambient noise in the background. But yeah, I wrote that bridge and I just talked to see what it would feel like. And I just kind of stopped in my tracks and I was like, what just happened? Like, that was really cool. And I'm like, do I just need to like talk more in my songs? I was like, this is so easy, you know?
Yeah. But, just creating a manifesto in the middle of writing a song.
Yeah, definitely.
That's amazing. It's funny you mentioned, you're quite the producer too. I mean, even just the subtlety of that bass in the beginning, it's just like all you can feel is warmth. And that's pretty much the only thing there on that verse.
Yeah.
And I think it's very exciting to watch how it just explodes. And that balance, I think, really does a great job.
Thank you. Like, so much.
Of course.
Like hearing the word warmth is like, thanks. That's the intention.
Yeah. Speaking of warmth. So the song is about a sort of loneliness, as you've kind of talked about before. What is modern love? And also, how do you feel that we evolve from here? I mean, and what a great time to chat about it. You know, when we're digitally speaking and recording, and everybody's kind of living in a pixel right now. Yeah. I keep joking that LA is a pixel.
We're in like Sims.
Yeah, literally. How do you think we go from here? And also, that's a huge question. So, whatever you want, whichever piece you want to take.
I'm going to answer all of those pieces because I don't think I've actually talked about this song in so much detail. So it's really exciting for me because it's the kind of conversations I love having also. And so for me, I had a really hard year a couple years ago. That is what made me go down this rabbit hole and like look at my life and like empty out all of the garbage I was carrying around. And I just realized, like, I just had a thought. I'm like, we are more connected as human beings ever, right? Like, you have people you talk with online who live across the world that you'll never meet, that you like kind of know in a weird way. And you can connect with so many people simultaneously, yet we all are feeling lonelier than ever, right? And so what's happening is we're sharing an idea of who we are on social media, and then we're not really connecting with the people we actually have in our lives in an organic way anymore, because every time you have a conversation with someone, or you're at a dinner, or you're even like sitting to watch a movie, someone pulls out their phone while you're talking, and is this, you know, and like people don't think anything of it. So on top of there being a disconnect geographically online, when you're talking to someone who lives across the world, that disconnect is also showing up in a different way in our personal lives, because we're putting the phone between our physical and emotional relationships, right?
And we're putting our phone in between us and our intimate relationships.
Yeah.
So it's not everybody's relationship to each other. It's also our relationship to technology.
Yeah, and how it's affecting our relationships with each other, right?
Yeah.
So it's like online, we're connected to people, but we're not with them. Some of them will never meet, right?
Yeah.
There's this distance. And now in our day-to-day lives, there's also this distance because, if you were talking to me right now and I was like this the whole time, like, how would that make you feel? Like, how much am I really absorbing? Like, am I with you in this moment, or am I just physically here and emotionally somewhere else, right? So, yeah, and I was just like, this is so prevalent in everybody's lives. And I noticed, like, even in the food store, like, this guy walking around during the whole, like, everything we're dealing with right now with COVID-19, and he's the one person who is on his phone. And he's like, oh, yeah, I wish I was there. People in LA, everyone's so separate from each other and no one connects and this and this. And he's like literally on the phone, like weaving through people, like goodness. Not looking at anybody. And I am having a completely different experience because I do work very hard to be present and be in the moment that I'm living, because like it passes so quickly. And meanwhile, I'm like almost running into people and we're like giggling to each other and laughing and like connecting in a way that you leave and you actually feel good, Yeah. And I think technology has such a negative impact in that sense. What's interesting with what's happening now is that it's almost been redefined because we've been so isolated and in our own space. People are longing for connection again, right? So now this made, not everybody, some people are definitely just struggling emotionally and feeling lost in their lives and becoming more insular, but there are so many people who are on like Zoom having like Zoom happy hour with 15 people. And like my birthday party was over Zoom with like a handful of my friends. And we were all just there because we were on our phone. So we couldn't be on our phone and be there. We were just talking to each other, right? So I think there has already been a shift. But what I'm really hoping is that a big majority of us leave this understanding that all we have is each other. And all we have is our connection and our relationships. And that's the most important thing because people are tribal. We've completely removed the idea that that's who we are. But, like and this is something I talk about a lot, but like with postpartum depression, for example, people are like, oh, that's not a thing. It's not this. It's like, no, it is. It's completely unnatural for a woman to have a child and then be locked in a house for a year by herself without adult interaction, right? And you used to, if you were in a tribe, which is how we're created and wired and programmed to be, there were like 6 people who had kids and everyone helped take care of them. And you were appreciated for being a hunter or a cook or a builder. And you had your one thing and other people picked up the slack. But this whole idea of us being individuals and the way that like capitalism and consumerism has affected what we think we're responsible for in our lives has completely undone like the connection that we need. And I hope that this is somehow pushing against that and people realize that that's just the truth.
What a great, amazing answer. I think you're so right. Even just I'm looking around my room now thinking how many people were involved in building the things I'm looking at, who was involved in sewing the clothes I'm wearing, and kind of deconstructing the fact that we're all dependent on each other. And even the society that we might think isn't real, or the world we're in, has been constructed, and what is that? What is the basis of that but human connection? That's all that matters. I love that response. I actually want to talk about a bit about the industry, which sounds like a shift, but I promise it's not.
Listen, I can pivot any which way direction.
Yes,
just tell me
you've
and
got
I'll follow.
So I want to talk a bit about your journey. So you've been through several bands, solo projects. You got signed to Atlantic Records out of your apartment in New York while in a a cello rock band. Like, you've kind of seen
crazy
and worked with some really big name producers, especially in the rock world. And now you're releasing music independently, but also the first time kind of solely created by you. How do you feel about how the music industry is currently structured? And what would you say, coming from your sort of awareness in the work you've done, about what works, what doesn't, and how we can change it?
Whew.
A small question.
Yeah. I'm like, I'll do it in 5 words. It's hard because there are things that are really working and there are things that are really not working, right? So some people have an issue with the fact that there are so many artists that aren't involved in writing, creating, like really any of the art, right? They're just kind of like the face of something because like their face is pretty or they're the right age or they have the right connection, right? But while you could look at it like that, also in a sense, it's almost going back to what being an artist used to be, right? Like you used to have like these huge buildings with all these writers writing songs and giving them to artists. And so one thing that I think is amazing that's happening right now is how songwriting is like a job again for so many people, right? So there is something really special in that because like we didn't really have that to the same. I mean, there's always like, every generation has like the Celine Dion and the Whitney Houston and the people like that who had songs given to them, right? Because they were like the voice, right? But for the most part, like we went through the 80s and the 90s were more about like actual artists and bands and things like that. So things were much more self-contained, right? So I do think it's cool that people who are expressive and creative get to create as a living right now and don't have to feel the pressure of being an artist if they don't want to be, or they don't feel comfortable with that attention, or they don't have a great singing voice, but they're an amazing songwriter. Like, so I think that's important to say, like, that's a great thing. The problem is things are so out of balance and we don't need another Adele. Adele's amazing. No one's going to do Adele better than Adele. We don't need another Bruno Mars. We don't need another Vampire Weekend, which every single like indie person thinks they are. Do you know what I mean? It's like we need people who are actually artists who have a voice and a story to tell. And in conjunction, we also need all of those other things, right? Like we do need, like my project's not for everybody. I'm well aware of that. Like, a 10-year-old like isn't going to sit and listen to my song and be like, oh, the way we've constructed the world is fake. Wow, this is like so impactful. Like I know like, that's not my audience, but you know what? Like I know the people who like Florence and the Machine, who like Lana Del Rey, who like Lorde, who like Bleachers, who like all like kind of more arty alternative stuff, who have crossover potential, which I believe that I have. Like I can hear my songs in the radio, no doubt. It's just finding the right people who understand it. And I think I have so many friends who are so talented also. And I'm like, why isn't this moving? And I don't mean so talented, like they write good songs. Like they look great. They have great voices. They have everything is perfect because it's them. And because the music industry has shifted so much and there's so much independence, the record labels are like scared to do anything but try to sign things that immediately make money. But guess what? Every single thing that made the record labels millions of dollars was done on blind faith. Mostly. Like people whose names go down in history were not as artists who changed the shape and the face of music, like David Bowie, Nirvana, even Madonna. Madonna wasn't manufactured. Madonna was like, fuck you, had a bratty attitude. I'm going to do things my way and this and this. And like, those people changed music. Like there are a few people now that are doing that. And like the people that I named mostly, but like, why are people so afraid to believe in the power of music and art and things that are necessary? Like Do you know what I mean? So I think like that's the problem when we have someone like Katy Perry and we have someone like Lady Gaga, who really had to bend a lot of ways in their career. And then we're like, oh shit, this is not what I wanted. Right?
And then we see them kind of,
and then we see them unravel. Well, we see them unravel first and be completely like just sitting in unhappiness and isolation from their fame and feeling like they're not being seen for who they are. Like, you know, I remember Katy Perry when she did her live thing and was talking
for Witness.
Was talking about like she doesn't want to be Katy Perry, like how Catherine Hudson feels so weak and not seen. And it's like, she's made so much money. Like, let her be her. Like, don't you have enough already? Like, when people wonder why so many musicians kill themselves and have substance abuse problems and like fucking Avicii, like that is horrific. Like, let people be themselves. Let them take time off if that's what they need. Let them pivot into a different direction. How many hundreds of millions of dollars do you need? And is it worth risking somebody's life over? Like that's what I think is sick, because even these people who've proved themselves don't really get the opportunity to be themselves. Right?
That is an incredible, I can't agree more, especially, you know, Gaga and Katy Perry. I'm a huge fan of both of those artists, and to see those intimate moments for them both. And I think you kind of intuited, for both of them, they both went through moments where they kind of just wanted to disconnect from the entire creation that was built around them, you know, by
which they were a part of. But it's like, and this is like similarly to what I was saying to you, I think off the record, but like on the record,
here we are.
It's the reason I had so many bands and so many things happening and so much failure, because nobody really believed in me. People believed in the idea of who they thought I could be. I can't tell you how many, and I mean like top level executives that I've sat in their office and they're like, you're a star. You can be huge. You can this. And so of course, like, you know, 17 years old sitting in an office, I'm like, oh my God, like my life is going to change. They see me, they this and this, and then cut to, guess what? I make a fucking record that I'm completely passionate about. And they're like, we can't release this record. It's because this was my record that my first record I did with my friend Damian Taylor. I played it for my label and they're like, we can't release a record that's about like suicide and sadness and depression and this. And I mean, this was years ago. Like I get wellness is buzzy now, but like this has always been my purpose. Right. And I felt so rejected by that when it happened, because I was like, oh, these people saw me. Oh, I did something wrong. Oh, I'm not good enough, right? So what do I have to be for someone to like release my record or to do this? So then you meet the next person who's like, you're an amazing songwriter. I'm going to sign you to this publisher and this and this. And then they're like, you need to be more like this and you need to this. And then again, then all of a sudden, because you want people to believe in you, right? Because most artists don't believe in themselves. Like most people, and I know this sounds like a stereotype, and I don't think it's where you have to continue to be, but I think people's journey to become someone who creates something comes from a lack in themselves, right? And a feeling in themselves that's magnified that they need to share, to release. And so, you know, that happens a few times, and then you start being like, you know, you meet someone else and they're like, oh, I love this, but like, you need to put trap drums on it because that's what's hot right now. Or like 808s are like really hot in all the songs right now. So you need to use 808s or this is the hot producer. And then all of a sudden, like it stops becoming about you. Right. And like, it's just crazy. Like why? Right.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point. And I think, you know, I won't even say, I'll say, what would you advise those folks in the business to be doing differently? because it doesn't sound like it's working, because the cost of commercial music is not worth someone suffering.
No, it's not. And also, like, this is what I always find interesting. Also, the cost that they are taking on isn't worth it either. Do you know how much time and money is spent? Like, they don't want to develop artists. Like, that's what you hear when you have someone who's in a band who has a following already, and like, oh, they're not developed yet. It's like, okay, well, you have 20,000 followers on Instagram. You have all these streams on Spotify. You have a record. You wrote everything. It's finished. You have your look, but like, you're not developed. So like, you can't get a record deal for whatever reason, right? But then they find a 14-year-old who doesn't write their own songs, is going through puberty, so their voice isn't even consistent, right? And they throw a vocal coach at them, producers, like the hottest producers too, who aren't doing this on spec, right? And then they put all this marketing money behind it to create something from nothing. That's exhausting. And like, I get why, because then you get to tell them what to do, and they get to hit certain trends, and like, it's more of a guarantee, but it could also fail. Right. And you can, and why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't you sign that, but then also sign this person who might fucking change the face of music?
Right. And you know what? The labels that decide to do that, they almost always win, you know, in the end, because they've signed Gaga after she got dropped from a different label. You know, they sign a pop punk band that ends up being Blink-182. I'm obviously an Interscope fan, so I should stop naming Interscope artists. But I think you're absolutely right, and I'm wondering. It's a tough one. I think there's also a lot more space for quote unquote development outside of the sort of major label system, or people are catching up to it. You know, Billie Eilish was signed to a JV and then got the full support of Interscope. An EP in, you know, and by full support, I mean kind of she was the priority, more than no support to begin with. But I think you're so right. I think it takes a lot of bravery to sign something that your gut believes in, and not that your pocketbook knows that if you put a ton of money in, it will succeed. It's a big difference.
And like, and the problem is like, because even with someone like Jack Antonoff, who I find very inspiring, like the process of his career, we shared a drummer years ago who's a good friend of mine, who was in my cello rock band, actually. That's
amazing.
And Jack at that time was doing Steel Train, right?
Gotcha. Yep.
And then obviously like Steel Train had a certain level of success, but like it didn't cross over. But then Fun, obviously it was like a couple different bands put together, and Fun was hugely successful, but he wasn't the front of Fun, right? And so when he did Bleachers, because he had like a little bit of proven success because of Fun, he was given the opportunity to do something that was very unique to him through that association, right? And I'm saying he's very talented also, right? But had Fun not happened, do you think RCA would have signed Bleachers and like put money behind it for him to do his thing? Like, no. And look what he did. Jack did not change one part of who he is. Like Bleachers, Steel Train sounds very similar to Bleachers, right? Obviously he's had more life experiences. He's like producing everything at such like a higher level now. But on top of Bleachers, he produced Lorde, Taylor Swift, St. Vincent, Lana Del Rey, all of these people in the alternative realm. And you know what? He probably would not have gotten signed if it wasn't for the association with Fun, because he'd be like, oh, well, it's just like a guy from New Jersey and this. And, you know, it's just like they would have found limitation. And like, that's what I think is sad, because like, look what he's done. And there are so many people like that who don't have that transition moment that makes people support them. Do you know what I mean? And that's really sad.
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good point. And you and I both, as stated fans of his projects, like we would all love if that weren't accurate. You know, we would love that every Jack Antonoff in the world could just blossom and flourish the way he's done. I mean, I'm such a big fan. I actually almost interviewed him when I was working for a blog in New York. But I think we all need to keep working together to keep this moving forward and creating those opportunities for people who maybe don't have that transformation point. And also, like, wouldn't it be great if they didn't need it?
Why did Kurt Cobain have to be in like a mildly successful pop act for Nirvana to change the face of music to the point that like the like nastiest, most distorted music that's ever crossed the airwaves was played on mainstream radio to the point that like my mom even listened to Nirvana? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and do you know why they listened to it? Because it was put in front of them. And someone decided to put that in front of people and not be safe. Like, do you know what came before Nirvana? Like all of like the synthy stuff from the 80s. Like we were still dealing with like the like post new wave stuff that was so electronic. And then we got this really just raw pivot. Like, oh, this is doing its thing. Okay, great. We've done this for almost 10 years. Now we're going to take this left turn. And look what happened. Like, it's so crazy.
It's crazy. And I think it's great to kind of look at those moments and think, okay, what do we do so that in our lifetimes, however long those are, like knock on wood, based on our current situation, that we can help forge those paths. And I mean, you as an artist forging your own path, me on the management A&R side, and just in the industry, I think all your points are great, and I really respect them. And
thank you
for digging in, because to anyone listening to the podcast, the music industry is such an interesting place that creates such incredible things sometimes, and then also makes it really difficult for people to create incredible things.
I mean, that's the reason I didn't put a song out for however much time, because, and you know, it's really funny because I had a conversation with Damien on his Twitch about this and kind of about like the crux of my career. And, I made the same record because that's who I am. I'm obviously a much better singer now. I'm a much better songwriter. I produced everything myself. But guess what my record was? Piano, strings, electronics, big subby bass, 120 vocal tracks in each song. Still the same thing right now because it's who I am. And I literally almost ended my life multiple times because I lost who I was and I lost the things that were important to me because people told me they weren't good enough. Like I sat in a meeting where they're like, we could release this record if you were a girl, but you can't be a male solo artist because you're not, that doesn't happen in alternative rock. Right. And when you think about it, like the male solo artists until like very, very, very recently, were all rooted in pop. Urban or R&B. When was the last time there was like a Bowie?
Bowie.
Right? You don't think that appeals to certain people. You don't like, and then, or they would say like, you have to present yourself as a band. Guess what? I fucking do everything. I'm not presenting myself as a band. I'm Atarah Valentine. This is literally my soul in music that I made with my own blood, sweat, and tears without $1, without anybody helping me. And like, that is going to be my name on it. Not because it's ego, because it's right.
I love that.
Right?
Not like, because it's ego, because it's right. Intuitively correct for you. Actually, I should ask you the question because I think you're getting there anyway. So what would you say is the intent behind your music career and embedding that career within your life? What are your innermost intentions?
I think while this sounds like the answer everybody gives, I think it's the most honest answer you could get when you're a songwriter. And that is to give people something to connect to. That they need to. And I think in particular with my project, I've been through a lot in my life. Physical abuse, emotional abuse, struggles with sexuality, people throwing just stuff with my gender, like that's not what a man is, and that's not what this, and you're this, and just like all these people trying to like label me and pigeonhole me. And it was such a struggle to like re-find myself and to completely own all aspects, even the ones that I rejected based on other people's opinions. And I think what happens in music a lot is that we only see people's best and worst moments, right?
Right.
We have a song like, which I love, but Happy by Pharrell. That's this like, oh, everything's great and right. And then we see the moments like people are falling apart, and that's like their serious ballad or, you know, but you never experience the process or live in, or those in between areas aren't really represented. And that's what I'm doing with my project is, in addition to talking about the vulnerability and like all of the things that happened to me, I'm also sharing my journey of what I went through and how I got there, and coupling it with mental health awareness and wellness, and with these different organizations, providing service to people and citing all the sources that helped me, and gearing like everything, all my merch, everything is built around it because it's important. And we're not in a time anymore, in my opinion, where you can just be one thing. You have to believe in something. You have to stand up for something, and you have to have your own perspective. And I just want people to feel seen, who feel invisible right now, and people who don't have people to look up to because they're not, you know, the 16-year-old like hot girl, or the, you know, or like the, like whatever, like the modern archetypes of what is important in pop culture. There are a lot of kids like me who feel really lonely and need somebody to look up to, and need someone who's made it to the other end of where they are, right? And I think in alternative culture in particular, there's so much negativity, like emo, post-emo, like, oh, it's so cool, like to be depressed. And if you're alternative, you have to, and I'm not saying this like to people who are this, but just the how it's a homogenized singular representation of what it means to be different. You have to be covered in tattoos. You have to be depressed. You stand like this. You smoke. You this. You right. And I want to show people you can be exactly who you are, and it might look very different from what the average person is, and still stand up straight and be confident and love yourself and be happy, right? And we don't really have that. And I think it's really important for people to hear. And that's what I want to be able to do for people. And it's been a blessing getting to talk about stuff like this. And I mean, I did one podcast for To Be Magnetic, whose work I can't recommend enough for people who want to transform their lives. And the next day, 700 people followed me. I got hundreds and this is just me talking about my childhood, right? And my story and like career, just like a synopsis of my life. And so many people reached out to me and were like, I'm going to start painting again after listening to this, or I'm going to start writing songs again, or I'm going to start doing this work again. I bought it, but I felt too insecure to get into it because you shared your story with me. And I just realized this is it. This is the thing. This is what I have to share. And this is the gift that I have to leave in the world. And listen, I don't care if I'm 98 years old. I'm going to still make it work. Like with my long white hair, and Cher's face and Iggy Pop's body. I'm still going to be there strutting across the fucking stage, like screaming to whoever's going to listen.
Okay, that is exactly what you must continue to do.
Yes.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I really appreciate, especially someone who's so unique in so many different ways that don't ascribe to a certain label, having you on the podcast and explaining how you've continuously done the work to get yourself where you are. And I think it's going to be inspiring to a lot of people.
Thank you. And thank you for giving me the platform to do that, and for your amazing questions. I'm kind of sad that we're ending because I'm just like, could we just talk for another like 6 hours?
But... Yeah, I mean, literally, I was just thinking like, cool, like, so 2 hours for Atarah at this point. And like, can we just do more than 45 minutes or wherever we're at? Thank you so much. And we'll catch up more sometime soon because
definitely
I am so excited for you.
Thank you.
Yay. Thanks so much, Atarah.
Thank you. See you soon. Stay safe.
All right. You too. You too. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, it's Shane. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Intentcast with Atarah Valentine. Follow Atarah Valentine on Instagram and listen to his new single, Modern Love. I'll include links in the podcast details. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate and share it with a friend and give us a follow at intentcast official on Instagram. Special thanks to the whole Intentcast team, Julie Diaz, Eddie Ramos, and Roger Weeks. Our podcast features Fifth Dimension Prayer and Los Angeles, two original tunes by Danielle Landy, who also composed our jingle. Check out her music on all of the platforms. Until next time, take care.